If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, welcome to yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout, and I'm so glad that you tuned in for another episode of yWrite to learn why people are writing, why we write what we write, and why you should be writing too. Today's show, I have a friend and a guest on, Sue Pettazzoni, and she is a teacher, a storyteller, an energy worker, and she is the creator of the women's healing group called H.E.R, H.E.R, Healing Emotional Realities. She's a certified Reiki master and teacher. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And she's an energy therapy practitioner. Her work, teaching mindful meditation for children and adults, has given her the title of writer, as she writes mindful meditation and creates stories to allow children to express fear-based energy. So today we're going to talk a little bit about writing without fear. And I want to welcome our guest today, Susanne Pettazzoni. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming in. This is
My
so
pleasure.
great. We've actually known each other for years.
We have.
And I don't know if I sent you this text picture yet, but I have a picture of when we got certified in Reiki together.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I'm just realizing I was going to send it to you the other day and I forgot.
Oh my
We have
gosh.
a picture of us holding our little certificates.
Our little certificates.
I think it was for Reiki. It was either Reiki 1 or Reiki 2. I mean, we're going back
I think it was Reiki 2.
probably 10 years or
It was-
something.
it was a while
It was a
ago.
while ago.
Yes, we were a little bit younger.
Yes, and we had more energy.
Yes, we did.
No.
Different energy.
We have a lot of energy.
We have a lot of energy.
Yes.
This is different energy.
And we both took the Reiki class. You want to talk about like why you decided to take Reiki, and let's tell the audience a little bit about what Reiki is, because this energy of helping writers to write without fear is something that Reiki can help them with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Reiki is working with your energy. Everything is energy. Your energy, the table's energy. As I tell my children's class, it's like everything is made of energy.
Yeah.
It just depends on what form it takes. Our thoughts are energy.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes important for writers.
Yeah.
Because we can't control our feelings. Our thoughts come and go. What we can do is manifest it in a way of action.
Yeah.
And that's where the writing comes in.
Yeah, I mean, using Reiki energy, I mean, when I started taking it, I was a florist for 31 years.
Yes, you were.
And I used to have, some people who have done Reiki come in, and they were Christine Bailey, who ran Western Mass
Christine.
Wellness Center.
Yes.
She, I was her florist, so she'd come in and she'd be like, have you ever done Reiki? And I was like, what is that? And it's a matter of putting good energy into things. And
Yeah.
as I'm explaining how I'm making my flower arrangements, I know that if you're ordering flowers for your cousin, you're trying to send your cousin a message.
Correct.
So therefore, I need to take your message and infuse it into these flowers to send. And, as I'm sharing, she's like, well, you're already doing that.
Yes,
I'm like,
you are.
yeah, I didn't know what it was called, So, I decided to, take her classes just to learn a little bit more about it. And I mean, it was just so beautiful because it really is, for me, centers me when I'm writing to say, I want to make sure I'm putting the best of me and the best of whatever the story is for
Right.
the best of the people who are going to pick up the book and read it.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you're doing a murder mystery, which
Good Lord.
now we're getting
Yes.
into the fear-based thoughts.
Interesting. Expressing
Express-
that. Yes.
Yeah, because, as a writer, when you're writing something that has anything that's fearful in it, especially to you, you have to make sure that it's not you. It's not happening to you.
Correct.
And,
And disassociate yourself. And it's like, this is the energy thoughts. This is me.
right. So we can control our thoughts, but we can't always control the thought.
Correct. You can control where your thoughts are going. So you become the conduit, like the path. You choose the path, and that's your control. That's your power.
Yeah.
When we talk to children, it's like your emotions are just feelings. They just come, and those are real. And learning to identify them is part of learning how to control them. You are always in control of your actions.
So you do a lot of programs at local libraries and with classrooms and with the children, teaching them mindfulness, centering themselves, kind of, I want to say, like,
I call it
teaching them how to sit still.
That's
a big lesson.
True.
But what do you do when you have like that, rambunctious child who's got all this uncontrolled energy? Because, I mean, we don't want to say it's out of control energy. Correct. We just have to learn how to control our energy. Right. What are some of the practices that you teach them? Or all the stories. She's written a ton of stories. We got to get these published.
Oh.
The stories
that's
she
where
shares
the stories
with them.
come from.
Yeah.
Yes, because the stories are, it's a mythical island called H.E.R, which is Sanskrit for tree. And this beautiful magical island has 7 ponds of color, which are all the chakras.
Yeah, right. I'm going to move this right here so you can see our chakra colors.
And each chakra has an energy center and actually has a message for you. And with the children, what I teach them to is like, where are you feeling this? Where's your energy going? And if they go like this, it's like, now we know it's between their heart chakra and their throat chakra. So this is where they feel. It's like, okay, now let's pretend. And then we start going into a story. Yeah. And that's how the story started.
So, and again, I don't mean to make this a little bit about me, but
please do, because we do this.
We do this.
This is how we work.
But like, when I'm writing, like especially working with, I'm gonna use April Rain right now because it was a murder mystery.
And I love that book.
And a lot of the turmoil I kind of went through writing this book, but it's like using, they have something called biofeedback, and using biotherapies and using Reiki and like really saying, okay, where is the story taking me? Where is my muse bringing me in the story? And where am I feeling it in my body?
Yes.
And I will try to give it a color.
Yes.
And then of course look up, where this is feeling and what it is, because I want to bring that feeling into the story.
Right.
Because I have to say, I'm feeling this for my character.
Because your character is can I say this? Like your character is transposing how they feel and showing you in your body where it is.
Right. Yeah. And I think, there are writers out there who create their characters, like create a character all from scratch.
Right.
I tend to build my characters a lot of times based on something in reality, which is something that I struggled with for a while. With April Rain, it was inspired from a death that happened in Agawam, Massachusetts. Lisa Ziegert was an unsolved murder for many, many years. Wanting to solve the crime, and there was no story. Yeah. So like, really meditating on, how can I create a story out of nothing? Like, I don't know.
But it wasn't nothing for you.
It wasn't nothing for me.
It wasn't nothing for you. You were feeling a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And
I would sit in church with my manuscript and say, why am I writing this story? Give it to somebody else. Like, I don't want to write a mystery. Yes. Like, why am I continually passionately fueled to move forward doing this? Like, I want to use my free will and say, nope, stop, done, give it to somebody else. And I've shared this with you is, I number one heard the words of, where there's no story, any story will do.
Correct.
Did not like that.
You did not.
Because that sounds like you're making up a lie.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a liar. But with fictional writing, you're telling a tale in a parable to learn a lesson.
Correct.
So it's, for me, I was like, you're right. You have to create a story where there's no story. So, in Angel's Journey, we're talking about someone who's in the afterlife reassuring her mother she's okay.
Right.
I'm creating a story because I want to hear that story.
Yeah.
So we write what we want to write. Yeah. But at the same time, hearing, make up a lie.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. Spirit is spirit, and do I pretend to know exactly what that is like? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Can I tell you how I feel about it? Yes. We are human. We're spirits living in a human body.
Yeah.
As humans, we like to put those puzzle pieces together because that's what we do.
Oh, 100%.
We need to have that puzzle put together, and every piece needs to fit because that's how our brain works.
Yeah.
And that's how our brain centers work.
Yeah.
This goes here, and it gives us a semblance of order, and that makes us okay.
Well, I went to college to study accounting, so again, puzzle pieces fit together very neatly in an algebraic equation. Your balance sheets, checks and balances.
Exactly.
Writing a story.
Everything gets double-lined at the end.
Yeah. Right. It's always fun. It's always fun to get that balance. But, when you're writing a book, you're trying to get that balance. Yeah. When you're trying to tell a story and you want to, have that checks and balances. And it can be hard to have. And, again, I'm going to take this to the spiritual realm a little bit because, we are talking about energy.
We are.
And, when you do have that energy that you feel from the other side, it can be fearful.
It very much can be fearful.
And
because, again, we're human.
Yeah. So you started, I know something happened to you in 2011,
Correct.
Which started this whole journey of going into Reiki, into opening yourself up into the energy world and things like that. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I think it's, I don't know, you can share a little bit. Whatever you feel comfortable with. And then
I've actually talked to my beautiful friend and asked her if it was okay to share the story, and she gave me full permission.
Yeah.
So I have a soul sister friend, and her son passed away unexpectedly. And during that time, at his funeral, I kept hearing the words, "Please tell my parents I'm going to be okay, and I will send them signs." It was probably one of the weirdest, most frightening things I've ever had happen.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm hearing this, and it's like, am I making this up? You know this. You know this well.
When you hear this, you do feel
correct.
Crazy.
Yes. Yes. And then...
And you don't want to tell people how you hear. I grew up with, my mother suffered with, some mental illnesses. Okay. And, it's like, she would always say, be careful who you tell things to.
Yes.
Because people judge you, people categorize you, and my mother speaks to God daily. And she's had some therapists tell her, you can't hear from God back. Like, God can't talk back to you.
Whoa.
Which
that's interesting.
Yeah. And, with that, I think, sorry, Mom, I'm talking about you right now, but, I think that kind of triggered some of the problems that she had because, it's being labeled, it's being judged, it's saying, okay, take medication to turn it off, which there is medication to turn this off if it does get to that scary. Because I always say, like, if the voices that you're hearing, even the muses in your head, whatever, your characters, if they're telling you to hurt yourself or hurt someone else.
That is not what spirit does.
No.
Spirit will never tell you to hurt yourself.
Get help.
When that happens, then that is something completely different, and that is when a trigger should happen. You tell somebody immediately, and then yes, there's help for that. Absolutely.
I have a story. Well, I have a musical I've been working on called "In the Middle of the Night," which I've talked about a few times on the show with other people.
Okay.
But anyways, it's a story about a writer struggling with her muse.
Interesting.
Because of that fear.
Seriously.
Because the muse wants the writer to write a rape scene and a murder scene.
Okay.
Let me tell you, I don't want to write those kind of scenes. No. That is not comfortable to me. And even though it's a character that is not real, because I'm creating a fictitious world, whether it's based on something that happened in reality.
You have to stay up here watching it here.
Right. So it's a matter of saying, I'm not creating this to happen in reality.
Correct.
And that can be a fearful energy because you don't want to put something in the world that's going to give someone the idea to do something bad.
And that's because you're also very empathic. And empathy, yes, and you're full of love, and you don't want something negative to happen. So that's a fear.
Yeah, and it's a fear that the energy you have to control to say, okay, why am I fearful about writing this story? I know why I was fearful because I don't want to put something out there that's going to give someone an idea to do.
Correct.
But I also know the reality of the story needs to be told. Yeah. There are some stories that need to be told, which is why I probably could never be a journalist. Because I think, like, if you have to report on real trauma, like, I want to write love and beauty and angels, and I don't know, and I'm doing this stuff. But, okay, so let's go back to you're hearing this voice tell my parents.
I'm actually hearing Brian.
Yeah, and what Brian's telling you is not something that's going to hurt you or hurt them.
Absolutely.
It's a peaceful message.
It's a love message, and that is where the difference lies.
Yeah.
It's a love message. So,
but how do you communicate that message without feeling like,
and that was a big struggle because it was like, how am I going to give this message? And he was very insistent, very insistent. You know how that feels. Loving, but very insistent. And it was like a loving message his parents needed to hear. And I have a very strong faith, and I believe in signs.
Yeah,
I truly do. They happen every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. And
I love sharing my faith and my signs, but I also know that if someone's not open to that, I'm not going to force it on them.
Of course not.
Because, we all have different belief systems. We all have different ways that God communicates with us, or the universe. I'm not going to convince someone, but I think sometimes when you hear stories like this, you do get convinced.
Yes. Hopefully it would, and hopefully your podcast will just help one person understand just a little bit more about themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's a very hard thing. There's no book that tells us what happens.
Yeah.
What we're going through individually. And every one of us is completely different. Mm-hmm. So the communication to my dear friend who just lost her son was like, and I prayed, it's like, please help me with the words. Mm-hmm. And that was the gift that came.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
I've done that. I'd be like, okay.
Yes.
If you really need me to do this,
yes,
you have to
help me with the words.
Help me with the words, the situation, the timing,
Yep.
I'm not going to blurt it out at, certain times.
Right. In the middle of a bus or,
By the way, your son says he loves you and he's going to send you a sign.
Not going to work like that. No.
I mean, you got to find, and they do. I mean, Spirit will give you that appropriate timing.
Absolutely. And that's, again, how you know that it's right.
Yeah.
Because Spirit is gentle. Spirit is loving. And Spirit will allow you to be open to give the message that needs to happen so that you become the communicator.
Yeah. So I want to bring up a little bit about, I know a lot of writers have explored, different modalities of hearing their characters and working into their thing, whether they use crystals, tarot cards, prayer, Reiki. But so we're talking about how we hear.
Right.
But there's different clairs, we'll call them.
Yes.
My grandmother's Claire.
I had to write them down because they're just,
I know,
it's like, I'm like, all right, here we go.
Because, people see things.
Yes.
And writers get their stories in different ways.
Totally different
And I
ways.
think that they do use these and they may not be aware of it.
Right. And everybody actually has the clairs all the time.
Yes.
It's just a matter of how they're developed. Mm-hmm. So some of us see clearly. We actually can see things happening. Yeah. Some of us hear things, right? Mm-hmm. Some of us just innately know things.
Yeah.
Some of us smell
Wouldn't that
things.
be great?
Right. Some of us smell things. Mm-hmm. I remember when my dad was passing away, I got in the car to go visit him at the hospital and went out to the car. This is the first time I'm sharing this, by the way. Oh. Yes.
A yWrite exclusive.
I went out to the car. He had been very ill, and Dad and I had a beautiful relationship, but it was different. And I guess I'm just going to share this for the first time too, because at the age of 64, I found out that he adopted me. So it kind of put a lot of puzzle pieces together in my life, and our relationship changed. What I thought my inner child thought was one thing was completely something different. And he and I, before he passed, did get to talk about it a little bit, which was beautiful. And so...
They were going to keep that secret from you forever?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And, ancestry DNA is quite the little gift that keeps giving.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, but yes.
But I can tell you, I have found my biological family, and they are amazing. Most of them are accepting. They're just beautiful. It's a beautiful story. That's another whole story, but yes. So that's the first time I'm sharing that, and here we go. Your whole audience just heard that whole thing.
Well, to learn, and at the age of 64 that you've been adopted. I mean, that's like a change on your whole life.
Certainly.
We're going to share secrets here. But when I was 14,
I think you need to why write with secrets.
Oh. So when I was 14, I found out that I had been a twin.
No way.
Yeah, but my parents didn't even know. And I actually performed at the Academy of Music in Northampton a whole little thing called H.E.R because this is so weird. So when I was in utero, people have these in utero memories.
Yeah.
When I was in utero, I had a twin with me. We had a very, very tight relationship. So I do believe that she sacrificed herself so I could live. But I joke and say, I ate my twin in the womb. So that, when my daughter started dating a twin, I said, don't mess with her because I ate my twin in the womb.
And
you don't know what I'll do to you. So, using that, I use humor to cope with, and I don't want to say that was a traumatic event, but I mean, so when I was 14, the twin actually started to grow within me. So we didn't know this.
Do you know I've heard of this? It's a real thing.
It's called a dermoid cyst. Uh-huh. So when they removed it, they sent it off to Harvard. So I have a nice Ivy League education, although maybe I'm just sitting in a petri dish there, floating in formaldehyde. Really sci-fi movie here. But anyways, they had said it had teeth, hair, nails, and bones in it, which are all the leftover body parts that get left behind.
Yeah.
And when I hit puberty, it started to develop, even though it wasn't developing into a human. It was just the sac started to grow.
Right, the hormones,
and, once they removed that from me, I felt so different. But I couldn't share it with anyone.
Interesting.
And I took to my journal, and I'd write to my journal, and I would write to, I called her Angel B because I'm Angel A. My name's Angela. Yeah. And my mom had always thought she was pregnant with twins, that whole time. But, back in the 1960s, they didn't have ultrasounds. They heard one heartbeat. Right. One healthy, beautiful baby came out. She was happy, But she also, kind of felt like something was missing. Yeah. And then when this happened at 14, it triggered with her, but I couldn't share the trigger that I had, but I ended up developing this spiritual relationship with her. So to this day, I know that that's kind of, my secret I'm sharing on the Why Write Secrets today.
Told you, this is a whole new thing.
But, it is when you find out something about your human experience.
Absolutely.
It starts to explain things, and it's okay, you have this connection with, two earthly families, which are, nurture, nature.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, for me, I felt like I had these two experiences here and there because one of me is there and one of me is here.
Right. And yet you were one and the same for a while.
Yes. And that's when, when we weren't in the same body and I'm hearing it on the outside, it makes you feel a little crazy, but, whatever.
It's all good.
It's and this goes back to using the clairs.
Yes.
And being able to discern.
Absolutely.
What to be fearful about that's really fearful. What's delusional and crazy. For me to, walk into a therapist's office and say, oh, I think I was a twin in the womb. That's, not a logical thinking. So that could be something wrong, but I have the proof.
Yes, you do.
And I'll just share, H.E.R means someone who carries two sets of DNA. Do you know this?
No, I do not.
Yes. So every woman who's been pregnant has carried two sets of DNA at one time. Their child and themselves.
Yes.
But, of course, being a twin, you have that kind of mixed energy. So, I'm maybe half human and half not human.
And that explains a lot, Angela.
But
back to the clairs.
Yeah.
So when I was going to visit my dad, I came out of my house and I could smell this beautiful aroma of roses. And I just stood there and it was like, where is that coming? And it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Okay. Got in my car, went to the hospital, got out of my car. Guess what was there?
A whole bunch of roses.
No, the same smell though.
Oh, it followed you.
It followed me and it was like, okay, this is a sign.
Mm-hmm.
This is a sign. And so it was actually at that point when I went in to go see my dad that he and I started talking a little bit.
And that's when he shared?
No, he already knew, but it was more of a, I'm proud of you. I'd like to think I had something to do with that.
Well, he does.
And I grabbed his hands and I said, of course, you're my dad.
Yeah. But we're all, like you said, spiritual beings. We're all children of God, regardless of who our biological parents are, regardless of who's, raised us.
Yeah.
And using like being, for writers, I feel like, when you smell those roses, like I think as a writer, like that's something that if they're using that sense,
yes,
they want to use it to describe it in a story so that the person reading it smells it. Yeah. And, like writing, when you're hearing your character to share the story, or if you're getting the vision of what the scenery looks like and being able to use that, I mean, those are all great tools for a writer to be able to work with their story.
Right.
But again, if it's something that scares them.
Fear-based, yes.
What are some tools that you have? I mean, and I know you deal a lot with children, but I think, we're all children. So sometimes when you talk to an adult who has this fear-based energy, talk to us like a child. Right. We might understand it better.
And you know what? It's like, what was that? What was that book? Everything I learned in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great book.
100%. Yeah.
Great book, because it's true.
Yeah.
Be kind to others. But I mean, it runs the gamut of, this is how everybody should live their life.
Yes.
Absolutely. And everybody is different. Everybody's fear is different. Everybody handles their fear differently. So when there is a fear-based energy happening inside of you, or with a child, even an adult, sometimes touch. Sometimes touch. Just touch. And there's a connection right there. And that's my energy transferring to your energy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, bingo, there's one right there. Mm-hmm. The next one is lower your voice and slow down.
I'm always
Angela, can you do that?
I can do that.
Yes, I know you can.
I can do that, and but my energy gets high sometimes.
It does.
And I always especially on the show, there's so much information to share,
and you have this much time.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to talk for 24 minutes to say, okay, if you have a fear-based, something going on, and you're trying to write a story, and especially if it's a memoir, I mean, think about people who have traumas that they've lived through that they don't want to revisit, but they want to be able to write about how they conquered it and how they are who they are today.
And that helps their fear.
Yes.
So that builds on their confidence, and it helps build their energy.
I have 2 pages of questions. I don't know if we're getting
now. Are we even going to get to those today?
No, but I want to get to one more, and I know our time is very limited. That's okay. But you started H.E.R.
Yes.
H.E.R., which I love. And, it's healing emotional realities. Which I love that label, and I will say that is why I write what I write, because there's realities in life that I need to heal emotionally from, even if it didn't happen to me.
It fits.
So why start this, and what do you do with it? Okay. Talk about her.
All right. So when I worked with Christine Bailey, at the Wellness Center, COVID hit.
Yeah.
Right before COVID hit, and you want to talk about signs, I was having very deep feelings that with the classes, I mean, they were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, the meditation classes, and I realized that a lot of women specifically were holding things inside and overcoming them. I overcame that, but it's there.
It's still there.
It's still there. Mm-hmm. So I went to Christine, and I told her, I said, well, what I'd like to do is start it's called a closed group. And the reason for the closed group is you form relationships with certain people. You start building a trust. If you have somebody coming in on a constant basis, which is wonderful, and in and of itself, that's one kind of class. This kind of class needed to be a closed class so that we all could build a trust and be able to express ourselves in a very safe environment.
Writers groups work this way too. A lot of writers groups are very closed, because especially if you're working on a novel, you want to be able to share what you're writing in a safe environment where everybody isn't going to take it somewhere else. And
that's a fear.
Yes.
That's a real fear.
Yes, you know, and so anyways, let's I love this, because so they're all in the safe environment that they are going to start doing their meditations.
Correct. And Christine was wonderful. She goes, oh, you can hold that here. And I said, well, there's one more caveat to this. I don't want to charge people for this. I went to a beautiful shaman who, one of her bottom lines was, whatever you can afford between here and here, zero and this, and whatever is good for you.
Yeah.
Because it's more important to help heal somebody than the money.
I agree with that too. And when I do distance Reiki, and I, always feel funny charging, but I know our time is valuable, and our gifts are valuable, and we all have bills to pay. So, I actually took a couple classes on how to get over that. But it is, I'll offer free sessions too, because it is more important to have somebody, heal from that.
Absolutely.
And for women especially, who are, I don't want to use the word more emotional, more in touch with their emotions. To find a safe place to heal. And, for me, I've always found it on the page, like going to my journal, writing it. If I write it down, I feel like it's come out. Like it's not in me anymore. It's That's now beautiful. On the page.
Yes.
There are times where I've had to burn the page. I don't want this ever to come back.
It's a healthy
And
thing.
Unfortunately there are, but sometimes I'll go back to reread it.
Yeah.
And it puts me back in that moment, but it's still, it's
healed a little bit more every time.
It's in between the covers. Yeah. So therefore, it's like when, you don't have to read it if you don't want to, but if you're called to read it and revisit it.
And that's good.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I go back and read my journals, and I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Look at how I've healed from that even.
So, all right, where can people get information about you? I know your books aren't yet published, your children's book, because you do more verbal storytelling.
Correct.
Where can people, send their kids for these verbal storytellings to be mindful, meditate, or, take your classes?
Well, they can get in touch with me via email. So it's Susanne Pettazzoni, SusanPettazzoni at Comcast.net.
Okay.
They can call you.
Yeah.
And right now, that's the format.
Okay, so I'll put that in the links and
yes,
stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, our time is over already.
I know. We could have a couple shows on this. I don't know. Maybe we need to have a spin-off series on something else, because I love talking spirituality and that energy, but I love talking both.
It's a combo.
And they, for me, are merged together. The spiritual world and the writing world for me is one.
No, it's perfect.
But yeah, I think it's very important. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, my listening audience, for tuning in and subscribing to yWrite on YouTube and coming in every week in your local towns to watch this program. Share it with your friends. And, if you're a reader, I'm sure you're finding, lots of writers on this show that you want to read their work and learn more about them. Like when we were talking to Sue Pettazzoni today, just about learning about how to heal your own traumas through meditation, through using, energy work. These are all valuable tools that we all have. My energy work tends to go on a page into a book, and for a lot of people who are watching the show who are writers, that's exactly what I know you're doing too, which is why I have the show. So again, I want to thank Studio 954 for allowing us to have this show, and I want to give you that little writing prompt before we go. So when the show's over, turn your timer on, for 5 or 10 minutes and start writing. And today we're going to talk about writing without fear. But in order to write without fear, I want you to take the time to write down what your fears are. Write down, whether it's a list or whether it's a story, however you need to write it down. Write down what your fears are. And then I want you to just reflect on them, because now they're on the page and you can actually identify what the fear is and why you're afraid to write what you want to write, because it's going to help you get over it and start writing. So have a great day. Thank you for tuning into yWrite, and I'll see you next time.